There was this car just flying straight towards me. I hit the windshield and was thrown up into the air. People had been injured and killed. It just wasn't on my mind that this could be terrorism. When we heard those gunshots and when we saw the scale of devastation, it became clear very quickly that this was something far more serious. I was down in London on the day visiting. I was a university student at the time. I was a 19-year-old at the time from a small town in Lancashire. I'd been in Parliament, I'd had a tour, I'd spent the day with my friends and colleagues from university. We all split up into smaller groups, and one group, for example, stayed in the House of Commons. Another group, I think, decided to do some shopping or something. They headed off in a different direction. And that left myself and about 4 other lads. We just wanted to get a bit of fresh air, do a bit of sightseeing. So we left Parliament, walked around. I remember past Big Ben. I took a photo of Big Ben on the way past, like every tourist does. I'd sent that photo to a few of my friends back home, and I was actually texting them as we got onto the bridge, when very abruptly one of the guys in my group just shouted, "Look out." I remember looking up from my phone, still texting the guys back home, and as I looked up, there was this car just flying straight towards me. It was a pretty big car, like a 4x4, an SUV, and we didn't have time to react. I remember I went over the bonnet, I hit the windshield and was thrown up into the air. Bizarrely, I remember this moment where, of course, it could have only been a split second in reality, but it felt like forever. It felt like things were almost slowed down and I had time to process everything that was happening. And then, of course, landed back down the ground. And it's really that landing back down the ground that probably caused most of the injuries that I sustained. I remember dragging myself up to my feet in this sort of daze, trying to find my shoes because the force of the car hitting me bizarrely had knocked my shoes flying off my feet. The 5 of us that were all there on the bridge were all injured. I was the most seriously injured out of my group, but everybody had a range of different injuries because we were all hit by the car head on. The doctors were pretty clear with me afterwards, actually, just how lucky I was, because the only reason that I survived was because when I landed back down on the ground, my head actually landed on the stomach of one of the other lads in my group. My head hits his stomach and it's cushioned, so not only did I not die, but it meant that I didn't lose consciousness either. The aftermath is what I remember most clearly. I remember one of my friends had quite a bad cut to his forehead and it was bleeding quite heavily, so we were trying to help him out despite the injuries that we had, and initially I wasn't aware of those injuries either. I'd been on my feet, I'd been walking around, I felt perfectly fine, and I think I probably knew deep down that you don't get hit by a car and come out of this unscathed, but certainly while the adrenaline was flowing through me and I couldn't feel anything, it was about, I'd say, probably 10-15 minutes after being hit by the car when really that pain started to come through and the adrenaline had probably ran out, and I started to really become aware that actually my injuries were far more serious than I'd initially been aware. That period is probably the scariest part for me, actually, is remembering what happened when the adrenaline ran out and when it became clear that actually I did need assistance and I did need medical help. There were quite a few things unfolding. People had been injured and killed. The guy driving the car had carried on driving. He'd crashed into Parliament, into the fence outside of Parliament, and he got out on foot and he'd stabbed and killed a police officer before he was then shot and killed. So we could hear the gunshots. You can imagine the chaos that was unfolding. There was a lot of really harrowing scenes around us, and incredibly lucky as we are to have survived. It's certainly those images that I think stay with a lot of the people affected as well. My first instinct was not terrorism. I didn't really have any knowledge of these issues. Certainly never ever grew up expecting to be affected by anything like this. It became pretty clear to us initially that this was not just a drunk driver. For the first minute or so afterwards, that was my first inclination that this was maybe someone had a medical episode or they were drinking at the wheel and they'd lost control. It just wasn't on my mind that this could be terrorism. Now that reality came crashing down very quickly afterwards, of course, when we heard those gunshots and when we saw the scale of devastation. It became clear very quickly that this was something far more serious. I spent about 8 days in hospital after the attack. Whilst I was in hospital, I had 2 procedures. One was an operation on my leg to put bits of screws and metalwork into my knee to give me a chance of being able to walk again. And the other procedure was to my hand to reset each of the fingers back into place and to put the hand and fingers into a cast because of the injuries I'd sustained there as well. It was when I left hospital that things were, I would say, even more difficult. Over the next 5 or 6 months, I was on crutches and a walking stick, and then spent a good 2 years or so in physiotherapy, because a terror attack happens, we see it in the news, and then within a couple of weeks, perhaps the rest of society moves on, and we even perhaps forget that that attack has happened. And actually the victims, the people affected by these attacks, are left to deal with the impacts for a long time afterwards. I was very conscious of the fact that this attack had happened to me at a young age. I was 19 years old. I didn't want to be felt stunted by the attack for the rest of my life, and I really did. And I was aware of the fact that I, had the rest of my life ahead of me, and I wanted to make the most of that. I didn't know anything about terrorism before the attack. I didn't know anything about being a victim of crime, about the things that we're doing to try and prevent these attacks from happening. And that's something that I really felt a need to learn more about in the aftermath of the attack. Not just to help others, but actually to help myself, to learn more about what it is that we're doing to prevent these attacks from happening, and what more we can do to support those people affected. And that really put me down a path to the work I do now. A lot of people affected by terrorism, we've seen firsthand what the only outcome of hate is. We've seen that the only outcome of extremism and radicalisation is more pain and suffering. And so we want to do the opposite. We want to prevent that from happening. And we know for a fact that the people who are carrying out these attacks are individuals. And yes, they may have been radicalised, but they are not representative of any wider community or religion. And it's really important that we stress that point around empathy and understanding. I'm proud of what we've achieved. Proud that I'm still here, and that we are continuing to fight on for the changes that we feel need to happen. We have an incredible network now of people affected by terrorism, and this is a club that I think we'd all agree nobody would ever want to be a part of, but ultimately we're in this club now, and we have to make the most of it, and like any club, to look out for one another. And we have an incredible network of people from around the world affected by terrorism who are doing incredible things in their community, and I am, for lack of a better phrase, I'm incredibly proud to be part of that community.